Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 420 of the Restoring Rapport podcast. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family, trying to get married as young as possible in a healthy way, according to God's design. My name is Seth Hensley. I come on this show twice a week, every week on Thursday and Sunday, and talk about the benefits of getting married, and trying to kind of give you some guidance in that. And I'm excited for the content we're going to be reviewing every day. This is a video by it's an interview of Jeff Bethke, but it's by Braden Turner. And they're going to talk about creating family teams and solving consumerism with purpose. And consumerism is something that I've been finding interesting recently. And so I wanted to share with you this idea of constantly taking and consuming and enjoying and experiencing yourself, but never creating and giving to other people those things that you're consuming yourself. And something that I've just been convicted about recently is just being a vehicle of creation instead of just being a vehicle of consumption. And that's one of the reasons I actually make a podcast, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's nothing wrong with listening to a lot of podcasts. But if you're only listening to the fruit of other people's work and you're really not doing any work for the kingdom of God yourself, then I think that could be kind of a problematic, way to live. So, and again, I'm not trying to heap condemnation on you or anything, but I think it is important for your family, for your future family, to be a family that creates and doesn't just consumes, that adds and contributes rather than just, consuming everything that you come across. And so I found this topic fascinating recently, been super convicted by it. We're going to watch a video on it today. Again, this is an interview of Jefferson Bethke, and it's by Brandon Turner. And we're going to be talking about consumerism, solving the problem of consumerism with purpose in your family team. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what Brandon and Jeff have to say.
Take back your family.
Take back your family.
Yeah.
So I won't ruin it. I'll let you talk about what is it like. What was the point of that book, and what did you mean? Like, what's a family team?
Yeah. So the point in that book is, again, this is, I kind of demonize the Industrial Revolution a little bit in that book, but of course there's obviously, we're driving cars. I'm loving my life. You know what I'm saying? So, but what's interesting about the Industrial Revolution is a trade-off that I don't think we signed the contract for, meaning like we didn't know this was actually going to happen. We didn't agree to this, was how much it disrupted the integration of a family.
Yeah.
So pre-Industrial Revolution, the father was where with his work? In the home. He was in the home, right? He's blacksmith right in the backyard. He's farming right there in the backyard. And where are the kids, by the way? They're actually probably working where? With him.
Yep.
With him. So it's a very integrated team by the nature of the commerce. Yeah. And that has a lot of benefits to it, right? Even kid size, right? Like, by the way, have as many kids as you want or as little kids as you want. I'm not on either team. But it is interesting how psychologically we've shifted, right? In the 1800s, you wanted to have 8, 9, 10 kids. Why? Because those kids were employees,
Yep.
right? Now, we want to have one kid, maybe two. Why? Because our kids are consumers. That's a very different kid identity, isn't it?
It is.
Right? We have kids now to give them safety and blessing and goodness and entertainment and, toys and all these things. And so they're consumers. So more kids means more what? Stress, anxiety, and pressure.
Really, really important distinction I think he's making here. Well, let's start with what he covered at the beginning. The Industrial Revolution was what removed men from the home. Okay, like he said, pre-industrial rev, men worked with their families in order to stay afloat. They worked in their homes in order to sustain their homes. It was not about going to a 9 to 5, working away from your family in order to make enough money to put bread on the table for your family. No, instead it was like, one author says, the sweat of your brow was poured out directly in front of you, viscerally. Let me see if I can find that article. It's an article called "A Man's Place is in the Home" by Trevin Wax. Really good article. Let me just put it in Google if I don't find it here. But "Man's Place is in the Home," Trevin Wax, and it's a really, really good article here, where basically he just talks about. Here it is. This is the quote. I'm going to share it on your screen for you. A man working his fields was his own master, the sweat of whose brows was poured out directly, visibly, in creating a home. His partner was not an impersonal investor, but flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone, and the subordinates alongside whom he toiled were not querulous strangers, but his own children, fruit of his loins. This is what has been lost in the 2-century-long transformation of house as home into house as a way station, that luxurious modern repository for food, a bed, and distraction, barely inhabited by a loosely knit community of transients, for the sake of which we shoulder a lifetime's servitude to debt. He's a really, really good writer. If you want to go read that article, again, it's on the Gospel Coalition, and the title of it is A Man's Place in the Home by Trevin Wax. I've actually reviewed this article several times on my podcast because it's one of my favorite articles ever written. But it's basically just talking about this shift that Jeff is describing right here of man from the home into the workplace, and woman followed him after in the women's rights movement. And in post 1960s, suddenly everyone's away from the home, because if you have mom and dad away from the home, kids can't be at the home by themselves. So we have they're at school all the time. So we have a child care system that the government runs called public education. And I'm a public education teacher. I know there's a lot of good stuff about it. I'm not ignorant about that stuff, but I'm saying that is where we are storing our kids while our parents are stored at their workplaces. And we're spending a vast amount of time apart from one another rather than working as a team together in order to accomplish things for the kingdom of God. And I just think it's a very fractured way to live. I don't think you can have as healthy a family if you are spending your time in such, different places. Like every member of the team in the modern world sadly often spends their time apart from one another. And it's kind of unavoidable in the sense that you have to have food to support your family. And the way that most people are able to get money to support their family is through a workplace. And that's just kind of a product of the times we live in. There's not much you can actually do. That's not within your control. You can't control the time in which you live. You can't revert back to the pre-industrial revolution. But what you can do is you can make conscious decisions that will enable you to spend more time with your family and work together more as a team rather than, different individuals. One of the things that I did, if you're interested in doing this, again, I know you guys are young people who are going to be getting married soon and you're thinking a lot about this kind of stuff. Hopefully you are anyway, if you're listening to this podcast. One of the things that I did was I chose a career. Well, I use the term career loosely because I don't look at it as a career. I look at it more as a way of supporting my family in the best way possible. I picked a career though that enabled me to spend a lot of time with my family. So if you're career shopping, you can know what a job requires of you as far as your hours before you get into that job or before you pursue that job as a full-time job. And so that it's common knowledge. It's common knowledge the amount of time that's required from you for each job. So like if you're going to work in the trades, you're going to make a lot of money, but you are going to have pretty much no time. And that's true for the majority of trades. Now I know there are some trades that are not like that, and this is not a hard and fast rule. You can go into the medical field. You're going to make a lot of money. At least what I'm talking about is in my geographical area. There are other ways to make money when you live in a more urban area. But if you live in a rural area, particularly the tri-state area where I'm talking to you from, this is kind of the norm. You can go into the medical field. You're going to make a lot of money, like a lot of money. You are going to have less flexibility on your time, though. You're going to kind of pay on the time front. There are actually a lot of jobs that can give you a lot of money if you're willing to give them a lot of time. Okay. And I'm not saying that's bad, actually. I think some of those could be a great fit for your family, but often what you have to be careful of is what it's going to cost you on the time front, on the time freedom front. You're not going to have the freedom with some jobs, that you would have with other jobs. Now there's a trade-off, because if you pick a job that's more flexible on time, that's still full time, but it's just you're working less, you might have less money. Okay. And so I think there are really sweet spot jobs that allow you to work flexible hours and fewer hours and still make crazy money. And those are the jobs that I would actually recommend to you the most when you're kind of considering what to do and how to best, invest in your family and your time with your family when you're a young person, deciding what job you want. And so these are just some things to consider. But I chose teaching because I got every government holiday off. I had like 15 sick days every year. I had like 4 personal days every year, meaning I could take them for any reason. I got 3 months off in the summer. I got like, 5 week long breaks in the year. So if you do the math, basically I'm making a wage that can support a family, and I'm only working probably like 1 out of every 3 days. I don't know the exact math on it, but I'm not working that much, okay, compared to other people. And so that's one of the reasons that I decided to teach. Okay, and there are other reasons too. Like I really think that the Bible says that whatever you do to the least of these, you do to Christ. I think it's a really easy way to serve and minister to people and lay your life down for people and impact people in very visceral and real ways. So that's another reason I chose it. But kind of the forefront reason I chose it was the benefit of it had for me being able to spend basically more time with my family. And so, yeah, to Jeff's point, you can't go back to pre-industrial revolution. You don't have the power to do that. You can't time travel. You can't change your culture on that drastic a level. But what you can do is you can make good decisions yourself, kind of personal responsibility that allow you to spend more time with your family. And so really, really good here. Let's continue to see, Jeff then moved into, what was he talking about after that? He talked about the Industrial Revolution, and then he talked about, let's see here, the fathers exiting from the home, and then there was something he was going to say, I was going to say after though. What did he talk about? I'm going to rewind just a little bit and see what he said here.
Give them safety and blessing and goodness and entertainment and
consumption, vehicles of consumption. Okay, yeah. So all of that, why do we have children? He talked about why do we have children. Back then, he said you had children to be basically employees and to add members to your family team so that you could, have a better life and work together more with them and basically get more hands to tackle the problems you would encounter. Now, he said you have just a few children because they're vehicles of consumption that only take from you and don't give you anything. And of course, I don't think that's how it should be. And I think that ends up biting people in the butt later down the road when they're older and they're suddenly finding themselves in a nursing home with nobody to care for them because they only had, 2 children who learned to be vehicles of consumption rather than, caregivers or contributors. And therefore, whenever their parents needed them, they didn't show up. They just kind of let somebody else care for their children or for their parents and abandoned the duty that they were never given to take care of their parents. And so, I don't know, people just have a real, I don't like the way, what's the word? I subbed once in a high school. Okay, and I had a conversation with a kid in there, and he was making the argument that there were too many people on the planet, which, yes, I know is a dangerous thing to say. And I don't think he really, because, I don't know, who are you to decide what's too many, and who are you to decide who should go if there are too many people on the planet? I don't think he was saying anybody should go. I think his point was that people should not have children and not have as many children. And if you're unaware, we actually we are not meeting replacement rate in this country today as far as how many children we're having. We're having 1.6 children per couple. Okay, so we are not actually replacing the people that it takes to make a child. We're not having. You would have to have a minimum of 2 children in order to replace the people that it takes to make those children, and we're not doing that. So we are a population in decline. We're actually getting fewer and fewer people in this country as we go. The United States of America and every other developed country is like this. We're below replacement rate, except for Israel. Israel actually has an above replacement rate childbirth rate. And so, but for the vast majority of people, this is true. Okay. And again, this high schooler was justifying that and saying that was actually a good thing because children just take and take and take and take and take. And that was what he implied. Really what he said is we don't have enough resources to sustain everybody. And again, this is assuming, like there was nothing wrong with what he was saying, assuming everyone is a vehicle of consumption. Assuming that everyone, I mean, there were things wrong with it if he meant that we should be getting rid of people, which he wasn't saying. But he was saying we should not create new people because they just take and take and take and take and take, and there's not enough to go around. That was kind of what his argument was. But the problem is people are not always vehicles of consumption, okay? You have people who are extremely good at contributing and creating. And this is why one of the reasons that I feel convicted to be a creator instead of a consumer is it's looking after your neighbor. It's taking care of your neighbor. Jesus said, all men will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. Okay. Greater love has no one than this, and he who lays down his life for his friends. you love me if you keep my commandments. And Jesus always talked about serving the poor and taking care of widows and just looking after people and, feeding people and just stuff like that. It's very other centered. The way that he's encouraging you to live in the scripture. It's like you're creating a lot of value for people. That's the Bible's version of living the good life, is taking care of the next guy. Again, like that verse I just told you a minute ago, whatever you do to the least of these, you've done unto me. Jesus is like encouraging you to not be a vehicle of consumption, taking for yourself, but rather being a vehicle of sacrifice and contribution and service and giving to other people. That's what the scriptures are about. And so when you have a world of people living like that, there's not a shortage of resources. There's actually a plethora, there's an abundance, there's a surplus of resources because everybody is contributing. So how do you get a world full of contributors? Well, you have children and you disciple them, you raise them to be contributors. Like, I don't think people understand. I don't have an impact, like a deep impact on people by talking on the internet like this. Like, this is a ministry. Yes, this is a service. Yes, this is something that some people I think can benefit from who are behind me in years, but it's not something that I do because I think it's going to have the greatest impact on the future. Something that will have the greatest impact on the future is having a children, okay, and raising them to be contributors and raising them to serve and minister to other people well. That's something that's going to have a great impact on the future, okay? And so this whole idea that your children have to be vehicles of consumption rather than of contribution and creation is a problem, okay? It's not true. It's a false narrative. It does not have to be that way. You can raise children as vehicles of contribution and vehicles of creation. And so let's listen to what else Jeff says here.
Toys and all these things. And so they're consumers. So more kids means more what? Stress, anxiety, and pressure.
And cost.
Yes, and cost.
Yeah.
When it was actually the opposite in like the 1700s.
Yeah. Less
kids meant all those things because you had no one to work the farm, no one to help out, no one to be with you. So I'm not saying that, there's also child labor problems back then and all that stuff. I'm just saying that's an interesting difference. Okay. So what we talk about is there's a lot of one of the poisons, here's how I'd put it. One of the poisons of Western families that I think hurts a lot of families is that it's really just a group and a collection of individuals, not a team, right?
Yeah.
Meaning like the individual is the most important thing over and against all the other individuals. And so then what happens is competition and consumerism win in that environment, because either you're competitive with each other because it's all about who can get the most resources from each other, or you just consume and leech off stuff to try to, be basically a fattened calf, right? Just like enjoy, engorge your life or whatever.
Make your life better, yeah.
A team doesn't have that philosophy.
But again, a team doesn't have that philosophy. And a team is also, it's not even just about team versus individual. It's about what's your mission. The mission of an individualistic and consumer is to make my life better. That's what they're after. The mission of a Jesus follower, of a disciple of Christ, is to make the next guy's life better, to serve my neighbor, to lay down my life for my friend. That's the mission. And those are totally different missions. They're antithetical missions. They're opposite missions. And so you just kind of have to decide what mission you're going to raise your family for and in, okay? And again, this is totally up to you. This is your personal choice. This is your responsibility. And you're going to pick one of these camps. And so there's only kind of, there might be other camps, but I'm not trying to throw a false dichotomy at you here, but you're going to be in one of those. Your family's either going to be raising children of consumption or children of contribution and creation. And so I'm just encouraging you guys today, one of those leads to really, really good fruit. It leads to children who will take care of you when you're older. It leads to children who are a blessing to the world rather than a curse to the world, as Proverbs would say. It leads to a future where people are actually looking after one another instead of looking after themselves. And it's a future of a lot less isolation because you have people who are caring for one another. It just makes so much sense on so many levels. And that's why I'm just encouraging you. It's kind of my sales pitch to you guys, anybody who's interested. I'm going to raise my children to be vehicles of creation and contribution and not vehicles of consumption. And I would encourage you to do the same. I think there are a lot of benefits to doing that. And again, I would also want to hammer home the point that you're going to be in one of those camps. So please make a conscious choice to pick the one that leads to life. Okay? because and sadly we live in an age of consumerism. So if you don't swim, you're just going to find yourself floating downstream with the current, and the current is creating vehicles of consumption. Culture is going to kind of the natural flow of it is going to make it easy for you to raise children who are consumers and not contributors. And so I would just encourage you, don't do that.
Philosophy. A team pools resources for what? For a mission, right? And how powerful would it be if our families actually saw ourselves as like being on mission? And I know you have a lot of like kind of business, real estate guys that listen, entrepreneurs and women and men and that listen. And to me, one of the biggest, I think, mistakes and things that makes me sad about people in that environment is they tend to be freaking A+ at teamness, for lack of a better term, in their business, and it fails in their family. And so all I say is, because a lot of guys will be like, oh, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to do. I'm like, dude, you are doing everything it takes to be an amazing dad. You're just doing it with your employees.
Dang.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're actually amazing at it.
Yeah.
You hold team meetings. You cast a vision, you have goals, you kind of tap in certain resources and people. You say, oh, you're really good at this. Boom, I need you to be this. Yeah. You're really good at this. I need you to do this. Oh, you two together, you guys are phenomenal at this and you guys wouldn't be able to do that solo. I need you guys to join up. And so it's like, man, bring all of that into your family. And so we do. Like you come into our family, we have little kids still, 9, 7, and 4. We do Sunday family meetings and we talk about goals. Our 9-year-old and our 7-year-old know what's in our bank account and we're casting vision and we're doing all these things. And what's crazy is, and there's been, again, some really interesting psychological research on children. Up until age 4, the most important thing a child needs is self-esteem, right? Meaning like that, or like unconditional love, excuse me. It's kind of similar, but unconditional love. Kind of that like, you're loved no matter what, you're loved no matter what. You would think that would go till 18. Now, of course, it's important, but you know what's really interesting? After 4, they don't measure that as the most important thing anymore. They found that the most important thing is just meaning and purpose. So up until 4, your kid needs to know they're unconditionally loved. After 4, they need to know that they are freaking matter, right?
Yeah.
So many kids, they're unconditionally loved.
They feel useless. They feel useless. They feel like, man, something I learned my first year as a teacher, man. I had a class of kindergartners, and if you would give them a job that no one else had, that they were uniquely responsible for and capable of doing, my gosh, would their face light up. Like they felt like a contributing member of the team. They felt so good that not only A, were they trusted with a responsibility and you specifically and uniquely gave them an assignment that you counted on them to do, but B, they actually felt like they were helping and they really wanted to help and make you happy. Like kids love to make you happy. And so it's to not do what he's saying is kind of like missing out on an ocean of potential energy. Like, here you have kids, who are just more than willing. They're eager to be of service and to contribute, and to not sort of bring them into that caring process and that, responsibility and that maintenance process and that management process, whatever it is that you're looking into, is a waste. It's just a waste of potential. And I know that it's unstructured energy. It's like they don't know, kids don't really know what they're doing as far as like they're unmolded, they're unshaped at that age, at really at any age. I mean, there's always somebody who's behind you. Okay. There's always somebody ahead of you too. So like, just take the opportunity to help somebody behind you. Again, sometimes it's easier to just do it yourself. I know, like I could easily do all the jobs myself that I gave to my kids in my class, but man, it did so much for our class team when I actually had them help, because it gave them that feeling of purpose that he's talking about. And these are young kids. Like he was talking about doing it for a different age. I think you could do it with microscopic things when they're younger, and then progressively bigger things as they get older. Like when he's talking like teen years and stuff, they can do pretty big stuff. But they're learning in their early years that they matter and that they're part of a team and that they're needed and that they can do some things that really well that other members of the team can't, and that's one of the reasons we need them. But yeah,
they don't matter. Like, well, why? Like the parent has never articulated to them, why are you here? Yeah. Like, besides just the like, whatever identity things. Meaning like, no. And we tell our kids all the time, you are here because we are a family team and we had a gap in our team that God decided to fill, and we could not go do our mission if you weren't on this team. Just like, would the Warriors be the Warriors without Steph Curry? No. Would they be the Warriors without Draymond Green? No, right? So team roles, super important, integrated for one collective mission. And so for us, it's just, man, it's a big shift. But it's, man, I think there would be a lot more blessing and goodness and love and beauty in the world if more families kind of left the consumer mindset and kind of the safety as the most important thing to actually, hey, we have a purpose together that we can only do together, not individually, and we need to rally to do that.
That's beautiful, man. One way that book made an impact on me, there's one line stands out to me more than anything else, and I'll probably butcher it, but you'll know what I'm talking about. Where you said, when you go to travel,
yes.
You're not, hey, dad's got a job. He's going to go travel for work because that's his thing.
Yes.
Family's sad at home that dad's not there, or maybe they're happy. We are sending dad out.
Yes, as an ambassador.
As an ambassador,
totally.
For our mission.
And that one is such a psychological toy, I guess, or play, but it's crazy how it makes the world's difference.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, nothing actually changed in my behavior. I didn't like not stop traveling.
Yeah.
But what I realized is, oh no, I'm actually going out as you got to think about it like the United States, right?
Yeah.
When you send an ambassador to another country, he is not all of a sudden just like disconnected from the United States. He's literally representing the United States.
Yeah.
And so what if you thought of fatherhood like that? That everywhere I go in work, I never take off the father hat. I'm actually representing my team.
Yeah.
I'm representing.
Yeah. And I think this is something that I think I'm going to tell my daughter and my future children as well. Not that you have to like dog your workplace and talk about how bad it is and talk about like, I hate going to work. I'm not saying that, but teach your daughter the reason daddy goes to work. Like, why does daddy go to work? Daddy's not going to work to have fun by himself so he can get away from you. Daddy's not running to work because he's mad at your mom. Daddy's not running to work to get away from this family in this house. Daddy's actually sad that he has to leave this family in this house, but he's going to work to get some money so that we can eat. And so that we have a house to come back to and be together. In other words, I'm working for my time with you, and I am not working to get away from my time with you. That is an incredibly important distinction for kids to understand. And this is something that you can just explain and something that comes out based on what you believe. If you really are trying to get away from your home and that's why you're going to work, then you're going to talk about work as this incredible thing that you can't wait to get to. And you're going to talk about your family as something that's really not that great and that you can't wait to get away from. And that your kids are going to pick up on that, man. Your kids are going to pick up on that. The world's going to pick up on that. Your wife's going to pick up on that. And that is going to drastically decrease the quality of your family. And so I would just encourage you, what he's talking about here is so good. Like, you need to listen to this guy. This is really, really good. What he's talking about, how you frame daddy going to work. That is really, really good.
My team. And when you go back and you tell 9-year-old that, 11-year-old that, 14-year-old that, it is wild how much more. I just noticed when I changed that, it's crazy how they stopped crying when I would leave.
Yeah, same.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, same.
So they would actually start cheering for me. They'd write me little notes. And of course, it's still hard practically. Yep. But man, it changes. Here's a better way to put it. People don't realize how much what the story they live in and the story they tell themselves and their family dictates everything. Story is everything. You believe a story and you're living in a story, and a story is also currency. And if you're not telling the right story, living in the right story, it'll change. I'll give you an example with sexuality that I always think about, right? So that's a hot button issue people talk about a lot today. There's 3 very different stories with sexuality today, right?
Yeah.
So you got the sociological story. The sociological story be sex is about power. That's the classic one that everyone's getting canceled about right now, right? Yep. It's about power dynamics and it's all about that, okay? Of course, there's an element of truth there. That's the sociological story. Then you got the secular story. The secular story is saying, no, sex isn't about power. Sex is about fulfillment and just pleasure. So sex is about just getting what you want, hedonistic, okay? Then you have the sacred story, which would be, I would say, the Christian narrative, which is sex is about covenant and oneness. Sex is actually a glue that puts a marriage together. Those are 3 very different stories. Do you think your life might be different based on which story you believe? I think so.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, if you believe that sex is all about power, you will radically use sex in a very different way than if you believe it in the sacred story.
Yeah,
so same thing with
absolutely.
family, right? Like, that, just whatever story you believe absolutely dictates your behaviors.
And this is something I've listened to Jeff for a long time, and I've read like tons of his books and stuff, and followed family teams really closely throughout the years, listened to so many podcasts that he's done. And something that I've noticed is that you could accuse him of being too macro level concepts and not being practical and not giving like detailed advice of how people can actually do the stuff that he's talking about. But I think his point in being so high level, like he hasn't given you any practical steps in this video. You've noticed. I mean, he throws them in there here and there, but mainly he's talking about a belief system. He's talking about changing your mind as a dad so that your beliefs influence your actions and your actions just kind of take care of themselves because they're acting from your beliefs. And he's trying to get you to see work not as an escape, not as the place that you go to have fun and do what you want to do and have individual fulfillment, but instead as an opportunity to serve the people in your life that really matter and the purpose that God has really designed you for as a priority. And that's your family, your wife and your kids, man. And so from that, it's not, the details just kind of work themselves out. If you actually believe that your kids and your wife are first of all, the primary mission that God has given you, as far as discipleship and caregiving and loving people goes, then you're actually going to enjoy spending time with them. You're going to see it as purposeful. You're going to see it as meaningful. You're going to see it as something you look forward to, something that gives you a great deal of internal satisfaction and intrinsic reward that comes from service just by doing that, just by believing that. And your actions are going to flow from that. You're going to automatically start treating them better. You're going to automatically start wanting to spend more time with them. You're going to automatically start praying for them more. You're going to automatically start treating them as teammates. And you're going to love them as you love yourself, kind of like the second greatest commandment, much easier if you if you just change the way that you see the family and why you're going to work. And so, yeah, I've talked a lot this episode, but I think this is really, really good. So let me know what you guys thought of this video through the link in the show notes. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Not the link in the show notes, sorry. Let me know what you thought of this video through the YouTube comments and through a private message on Spotify. Or well, you can't do a private message on Spotify. You could comment, or you could do a private message on Facebook and Instagram to the Restoring Rapport page. We would love to hear from you. It would make us feel super connected to you as audience members, and it would make this podcasting system two-way instead of a boring monologue. So thank you guys so much for listening today. God bless you. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will talk to you next time.